program is going to be the topic specifically, and the title is Paterson's Forgotten Automotive Industry, the story of Everett Abbott Cooper. And we have an esteemed colleague of ours tonight, Michael Gabriele, who is going to provide the presentation to us tonight. Some of you may remember him. He's probably most famous for diners. Okay, that's probably his signature project that he's worked on. The books, the exhibits, and all those things. He had one actually up at the Passaic County Historical Society several years ago that some of you may have attended. So, what do we know about Mike? Well, Mike basically is, and again, a published author. He now has 5 books. The most recent, Mike, is, I believe, is on the Taverns of New Jersey.
Taverns of New Jersey.
Exactly. He's a 1975 graduate of Montclair State University and has worked as a journalist and a freelance writer for more than 40 years. He's a member of the executive committee of the Nutley Historical Society and serves on the advisory board of the Clifton Arts Center, which is right around the corner from the museum. So we want to thank him tonight. And Michael, I'll turn over the microphone to Mike. Okay, so here we go. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Paterson Museum Foundation for hosting the program and inviting me. I appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's on Zoom tonight for tuning in. That's very nice. Yes, my topic tonight is Paterson's Forgotten Automotive Industry. And Paterson is, over the years, has been very famous, going back even to Alexander Hamilton days, as being a real industrial hub for New Jersey and really for the country in the early years. It's well known for the Colt 45 and for building locomotives and its industrial complex with the silk industry and the Paterson Falls, but not much that I could find actually was ever said about the automotive industry. And yes, New Jersey had an automotive industry in Paterson and actually and elsewhere too. There was a period where we were building cars. Pretty remarkable actually. So I knew about Everett Abbott Cooper from my diner books because the research I did and the Cooper family members I met, they were all very helpful. And the Silk City Diners, which were built in Paterson, that was a division of the Paterson Vehicle Company. But then the question is, okay, so now I know about diners. Well, what about the Paterson Vehicle Company? Where did that come from and how did that start? And we were really making cars here in Paterson? The answer is yes. And I'll provide you with some information. The story really centers on Everett Abbott Cooper. And what a man, an entrepreneur, very involved in politics in his day. And there he is, nice straw hat. And, that's him. So he was born in Suffern, New York, not too far from the New Jersey northern border, May 11, 1860. Suffern was a very small community at that time, just a little over 1,000 people. He actually came from a family of businessmen. There was a man named Thenis Cooper who bought a grist mill and sawmill in Suffern in 1814. And that was taken over by, I guess, his son and maybe Everett Abbott Cooper's grandfather or father. And so there's an example of how the Cooper family was involved with industry way back when. Everett Abbott Cooper, he graduated from high school 1878 and entered the Centenary Collegiate Institute, which I guess is Centenary University now in Hackettstown, still around. He was studying to be a Methodist minister, but after 2 years, he changed his mind. He said he decided to want to go into business. He got married and had 6 sons, and they would all become vice presidents in the family business. In those early days, not only was he involved, was an entrepreneur and a businessman, he was very interested in Suffern politics. He won an election in November of 1895 to become a canvasseer. And of course, I had to Google what that was. and that's a person who oversees and monitors and verifies, certifies local elections. So he became the Suffern Village president, which I guess is comparable to a mayor, and he served from 1898 to about 1901. And he probably also served on the Rockland County Assembly. He got into the business, the wagon business, by he had some personal connections with the Cortland Wagon Company, which is farther upstate New York. He probably worked there. He probably did some business with them, and then in 1886, when he was about 26 years old, he founded his own wagon business in Suffern, 1886. One of the questions I always had and didn't really know, okay, so he's in Suffern, he starts his business, Suffern Wagon Company, 1886. When did he come to Paterson? Well, I never knew the answer to that question, but in looking at old newspapers, the Paterson Evening News, he came to Paterson around the year 1889. There was a page 1 story in the December 20, 1893 edition of the Paterson Evening News, and it was a feature article about Mr. Cooper and his business. And the story went on about 4 years ago, the Paterson Wagon Company began in this city. So if my math is correct, I hope it is, that would be 1889. And they were making wagons. They also made wagon accessories too: harnesses, blankets, robes, whips, and wagon furniture. These wagons, they were like upholstered sofas. They were leather seating, and they were quite beautiful. The Paterson Evening News later on reported that he was doing quite well. The business was doing fine. His main store or showroom, as it were, was at 257 Market Street, and apparently that a lot of people knew about it. Now let's see. Oh, I'm falling behind on my images, so maybe we got every Cooper. Heather, how about the Cooper family shot? There's the executive board right there. This is an amazing picture. And then images 4 and 5. Those are Paterson vehicles, Paterson wagons, and these are advertisements, and really quite nice products. Yeah. There's a logo from the business. He's in Paterson, and you can see that the date is 1896. So that's a pretty good indication. On the logo, you can see that he did business with carriages, business wagons, horse goods, and bicycles. They were a sales agent for selling bicycles, and I guess he thought that this diversity was good for competition for him. There were many wagon builders in New Jersey in this period, in Trenton, in Elizabeth, and Newark, and probably some other towns as well. So the wagon business was quite widespread, very competitive. And these were wagons. These were horse-drawn wagons that were used for municipal purposes, for fire departments, for police departments, for businesses that wanted to transport goods, and for farms, and just, I suppose, it must have been something of a status symbol where you had a beautiful carriage that sat in your outside your home. So he was quite successful in his business. Horse-drawn lunch wagons, and this sort of harks back to my diner books. Diners and today's food trucks, they both have a common ancestor, and that's the lunch wagon, and that was a horse-drawn wagon specifically built for food distribution on the street. And those wagons, that's the ancestral origins of the diner business. So what image are we up to now? 6 and 7. I love this picture. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but as you can see now, this is a truck, and I love the logo. Wagons, automobiles, painting, repairing, trimming the Paterson Vehicle Company. When did he decide to get into business with the so-called horseless carriage? Again, I didn't know that until I was doing research. Well, he diversified again, kept the wagons, horse-drawn wagons, but he got into vehicles, cars and buses and trucks around February 1901. And again, the Paterson Evening News on a page 1 story said that plans have been drawn up for a large new building to be erected at the rear of the Paterson Wagon Company on Market Street. The new structure will be used exclusively for the automobile department of that progressive firm. And they sold steam, gasoline, and electric vehicles. Now think about that, electric vehicles. And there was, back in those early days of the 1900s, there was a demand for electric vehicles. And they used Thomas Edison's batteries, the nickel iron alkaline batteries. And from what I read, you could get almost 100 miles on one charge. Now, everybody's talking about electric vehicles nowadays, but electric vehicles were prominent and part of the mix way back over 100 years ago. And the vehicles that he sold at his showroom came from New York, the Ward Electric Automobile Company. So he became a sales agent for there. Is the next slide, does that show the electric vehicles? I think so. Here. Now, look closely. These are really cool vehicles. They're boxy, but what's missing? There's no engine in front because it's run by a battery. Both the I guess trucks that would deliver provisions, and bakeries were especially keen on electric vehicles because they didn't want their baked goods, their breads, their cakes, their pies to be fouled by gasoline fumes. They preferred to have their deliveries done with electric vehicles. And so here they were selling electric vehicles in Paterson and making bodies for gasoline vehicles. And so this is, Paterson had a automotive industry way back when. The Great Paterson Fire, February 1902. Apparently, the Paterson Wagon Company survived that fire, although it did cover 26 blocks and burned or damaged over 450 buildings. There were estimates of damage at the time of $10 million, which is probably in the billions today. So, but as bad as the fire was, there were 100 people homeless, but the newspaper account said that only 2 deaths were directly linked to the fire. That's 2 deaths. I mean, I'm sorry for the 2 people who died, but that's pretty amazing. So after the Great Fire, the Paterson Wagon Company had fallen into hard times. Business was not going well. They filed for bankruptcy, and that was recorded in a September 30, 1905 article in the New York Times, and also covered in the Paterson newspapers as well. But you have to look at the bankruptcy filing in the context of what was going on back in those days. So a lot of things must have been disrupting business. There was the silk worker strikes in 1902 and 1913. Created a lot of social and economic upheaval in Paterson. The United States was just at the very end of a Great Depression, which included the famous stock market panic and probably started the end of the infamous Gilded Age. So there were extenuating circumstances. There was a lot of tension and a lot of disruption in the economic environment back in those days. But a year later, 1906, they came out of bankruptcy, And over the years, Mr. Cooper was very proud. He repaid all the debts that he owed. And so now they were really going to start going into building automotive bodies for, among other companies, the Ford company. And let's see, the trucks. Now, members of the Cooper family, who I've gotten to know over the years, how did they do this? How did they build automotives in Paterson? Well, I was told that some of those sons that you saw in the picture a few slides ago, they would take the train to Detroit and they would drive back to Paterson with these bare chassis. And Heather, we got a slide for that, I think. Well, that's the truck. They drove several of these back to Paterson. And so while the Paterson Vehicle Company did not build engines and they didn't build the chassis and the structure, they did build the bodies for trucks and buses and cars. And that was the business. And they specialized it. And again, they specialized in custom auto bodies. The thought never really sunk in, but car manufacturing in those very early days, that was a custom production operation. Trucks, cars, buses, they were built to specification to what the customer wanted. They were built individually, and you could have it in whatever color you wanted or whatever design you wanted. And that was vehicle production back then. But then what happened? Mr. Ford invented the assembly line. And I have a picture of that as well. We can move to that one, Heather. The assembly. All right, all right, go back a minute. So just go back one. This is the Paterson wagon company. As you can see, they're making individual auto bodies to various specifications. This was inside the plant. Not an automated system. It was a very much a hand-built operation. Go to the next slide. Now you can see this was actually a public domain picture. Now Mr. Ford had the idea of having assembly line production of cars. And I read from the Ford website that the assembly lines, they cut the time to build a car to about 90 minutes compared to what was the industry standard of hand-built cars of about 12 hours. So, I mean, the economic advantages they're enormous. They're just quite obvious. Although not everybody was very happy with doing line work like this. I read an article in Smithsonian Magazine where many people who were in this industry up until the advent of the assembly line, a lot of the workers, a lot of the companies, they felt that this was really not the way to do it. They resented the fact that this was being automated this way. They said that it took away from the custom-built craftsmanship that they had when they were building cars and trucks. I suppose it did, but the economic advantages were just too great. And so during this time, during World War I, Paterson, they continued to do auto bodies, but the work for cars and trucks just kept getting lighter and lighter. The demand was slack. The assembly line took up a lot of business. What they did do, they still did a little bit of customization, and they did repairs. So they still had cars and trucks operations in the plant, but now they would soon turn the business over to diner manufacturing. I should mention that during the World War II years, the U.S. government redeployed manufacturing operations in Paterson at the Paterson Vehicle Company. They were used to build vehicles that would transport aerospace components and things from the Wright-Patterson Aeronautical Corporation. It was right after World War I that one of the sons, one of the vice presidents, William Cooper, he had this idea to explore diner manufacturing. Diners were just starting to come into their own in the United States as a cultural icon and as a business. And Jerry O'Mahony was probably the great grandfather of the diner business and the lunch wagon business in New Jersey. Lunch wagons actually started up in Providence, Rhode Island, and then as the lunch wagons getting bigger and bigger and more popular, you no longer needed to be mobile. You didn't have to have the wagons transported by horses anymore. You could be a set location, and so again, a set location. You had bigger and bigger wagons. Soon the wagons evolved into what we know today as diners. So that was William Cooper, and Les Cooper, one of the descendants of Paterson Vehicle Company. He told me that the development of the diners, or the dining car, there was an idea that the Paterson Vehicle Company could improve those early diners and lunch wagons because of its experience in auto body production. They could transfer or redeploy that experience into diners and wagons. 1924 is when they started doing lunch wagon and diner prototypes, and then by 1906, that's when they really started commercial production of Silk City diners built by the Paterson Vehicle Company. And that then really became, and then we have the plant. Now, if you look way over on the left-hand side, very small in the window there, you see Paterson Vehicle Company bodybuilders. So this was the plant where they were doing things. So diners started to come of age in the late 1920s. Mr. Cooper, Everett Abbott Cooper, he died on January 4th, 1953, at his home on Deron Avenue in Paterson. He was 92 years old. And the company went on. The sons kept running the businesses, building, doing car manufacturing and repairs. But really, the diner business is really what became the big profit center for the Paterson Vehicle Company. Up until the mid-1960s, the diner business was really starting to fade. New Jersey was really the diner manufacturing capital of New Jersey. We had many diner builders here in New Jersey. And these are diners that were built in a factory, modular, prefabricated, with all the utilities, everything built in. It was a turnkey operation. They even included cups and saucers and silverware with the diners, the Silk City diners that were sold. And this was a very profitable business. But things started to slow down. The fast food restaurants started to come to New Jersey and to the East Coast. And of course, that did cut into business. A lot of the diner builders were fading, were going out of business, and that also hit the Paterson Vehicle Company and the Silk City Diner division. So by 1964, production ceased, and then they liquidated all the assets and all the operations and the equipment that they had. Paterson, as an automotive place, actually had there were other things that were going on in the city, namely midget car races at Hinchcliffe Stadium beginning in the early 1930s. And midget car phenomenon started on the West Coast and soon crossed over to the East Coast. And that was a diner flyer there. I mean, look at that thing. It's beautiful. And this is part of America's production legacy. Nobody ever built things like this before. So now go ahead to the next slide. So you had midget car racing at Hinchcliffe Stadium. And here's a midget car. It's basically four wheels and a big engine. These things could go very fast, and it was an open cockpit. They were very, very dangerous, but you had to be a daredevil to race. Now, I believe this picture shows one of the legendary places in Paterson where car mechanics and drivers, where they really, their corner of the city was a place called Gasoline Alley, and it's sort of taken on legendary status. I guess this must be on Gasoline Alley. It's a dirt road. It's not paved. I can tell you that. And these were where all the garages, and where all the blacksmiths, and where all the mechanics worked, metalworking operations. There were a lot of, and this is where the drivers would either before or after a race. This was their hangout. This is where they went. This was their social gathering spot. And according to the newspaper articles I saw, the Gasoline Alley Tavern, which was on 838 Market Street, that was the place. That was where, I guess maybe there was like maybe you had to be like a driver of a certain rank to get in, but that was really the place where the drivers and all the people associated with car racing, that's where they hung out. And Hinchcliffe Stadium also had motorcycle races and even stock car races, but that stopped in the mid-1950s, I believe. And so that's when. But now the automotive part of Paterson's industrial profile basically went away. The Paterson Vehicle Company was still doing some repairs, but mainly their business now was diners. In New Jersey, outside of Paterson, I found out that there was also automotive manufacturing. In fact, major automotive manufacturing. The Ford Company, they had a plant in Edgewater, and I've seen pictures of it. You can find it online. And this, in the time, it was one of the largest car manufacturing facilities in the United States, as big as Detroit. And that's pretty amazing. They closed that operation in 1955, and Ford transferred the operation to Mahwah. And that plant employed about 5,000 workers. But again, Ford decided to terminate the operation July 1979. In a Bruce Springsteen song, he talks about they closed down the auto plant in Mahwah late last month. So that's he immortalized that. General Motors also had a vehicle assembly plant in Linden. It opened in 1937, closed in 2005. So quite amazingly, New Jersey had an automotive industry, and the hub was Paterson. So there's a couple of, we had so many great pictures we came upon. I wanted to just include these at the end, Heather. So if you can show those. Again, this is an electric vehicle. To me, these things are like, something, they're like modern, the way they look, the way they were designed. Beautiful, beautiful. So this was an electric vehicle. And the next one, now this is a fire truck, gas powered, of course. You can see the engine. But again, I love the building facade, the Paterson Vehicle Company. That's why I like this picture very much. So there's a few more. I believe there was a bus. Now look at this thing. This is like something out of a movie from just last year. This is a very, very interesting and very, very innovative design that they had here. So this was a bus. And maybe to end the program, we'll show you the logo. Let's not forget who is building all these things at the Paterson Vehicle Company. Who's making diners? Who are doing the auto bodies? Well, here they are, guys like this. These were skilled craftsmen. These were men who knew how to work with metal, they were carpenters, they were electricians, they were plumbers, they were pipe fitters. They knew how to do all these things. And so they worked on vehicles, they did the auto bodies, and then that manufacturing those manufacturing methods were transferred to building diners. So, and I think the last one is the logo. Paterson Vehicle Company, founded 1886, manufacturers of Silk City diners. So with that, I will say thank you very much.